Hi JPIAns. So today we will be talking about Introduction to Taxation. For this episode, we will learn about the definition of taxation and its given limitations. So, what is taxation? Here, we are given three definitions of taxation. First is taxation is a state power. Taxation, or the power to tax, is one of the three inherent powers of the state. Inherent meaning pagkabuo ng estado ay meron na agad itong tatlong kapangyarihan. Ito ay ang taxation, police power, at eminent domain. Taxation is a power to enforce a contribution proportional to the income of the individual to be used for public purpose. So, tax is imposed on income para sa government projects. Second, taxation is a process. Hindi porket inherent na may power to tax ang government, ay pwede na nilang i-tax ang kahit anong gusto nilang i-tax. Merong process para i-distinguish kung aling items ang itatax, why are they taxed, at kung magkano ang i-impose na tax. Ang power na ito ay binibigay natin sa legislative branch of the government which composed of Senate and Congress. Normally, ang tax laws ay nagmumula sa ating Congress. Yung tax laws, ito yung nagbibigay kung alin yung bagay na itatax natin, kung magkano yung tax at bakit natin itatax. So, ang third definition dito ay taxation is a mode of wealth distribution which is guaranteed ng isa sa mga limitation ng taxation na tax should be progressive, in which the higher the income, the higher the tax that is imposed, na makikita natin sa regular income tax ng mga individuals na may brackets. Ito ay dahil kung mas malaki nga naman ang income ng isang individual, ibig sabihin, mas na-utilize niya yung mga projects ng government para sa kanyang income. So, mas malaki yung kailangan singilin sa kanya ng government. Tas guys, yung taxation, siya ay naka-anchor sa lifeblood doctrine. Ang lifeblood doctrine ay, ibig sabihin niya ay taxes are essential and indispensable to the continued subsistence of the government. Meaning, kapag walang taxes, parang dugo ng tao, ay walang buhay yung government kasi sa taxes natin sila kumukuha ng funds. Connected with the lifeblood doctrine is the theory of taxation, which is the government's need for funding for their projects like bridges, highways, and other infrastructures that we utilize, and the services that they provide through the police and other government services. These projects and services are linked to the basis of taxation, in which the mutuality rather between the government and the public. We give them funds for their services, so we shall demand for what we or our parents pay and let the government be accountable. The scope of taxation power, or we can say the characteristics of taxation, is comprehensive or broad because taxation is a broad subject. Plenary, it is absolute. Taxation is absolute, unlimited, but after discussing the limitations, inherent and constitutional, we can say that taxation is not that unlimited and it is supreme because it is an inherent power of the state. So now we will talk about the limitations of taxation. There are two major classifications of the limitations of taxation. But first, let's talk about the inherent limitations. The first inherent limitation is territoriality, meaning the Philippines can only tax within the boundaries of the Philippines. All income derived within the Philippines are taxable by the government of the Philippines. However, there is an exemption to this rule. The Filipino citizens and the domestic corporations are charged on worldwide income. So, their income outside the Philippines are still taxable in the Philippines. So, OFW's income abroad are still taxable in the Philippines, and the income of domestic corporations like Jollibee and San Miguel Corporation in America or somewhere else in the world are still taxable in the Philippines. The second one is international committee. International committee is an agreement or treaty within governments. The government don't charge another government. For example, there is an agreement within US and the Philippines that they don't tax each other's offices. So the Philippine embassy and the US embassy are free of charge within another, or free of taxes rather. This also applies to citizens. If America doesn't impose taxes on some income of Filipinos in America, then the Philippines shall reciprocate this and shall not impose the, the same tax to the Americans here in the Philippines. The third one is public purpose. Taxes shall be collected for public purpose and used for public purpose. It cannot be used for private interest. The fourth limitation is exemption of the government. The government shall not tax itself because it is a waste of resources and cost. So government agencies and its subsidiaries like PSA and BIR are not taxed, though they have income. However, the government-owned and controlled corporations like Land Bank and GSIS are still taxable. The fifth and last inherent limitation is the non-delegation of the taxing power. The taxing power, or the power to select which items to tax, is solely given to the Congress and cannot be delegated to other branches of the government. So now, we will go now to constitutional limitation. Under constitutional limitations, the first one is the due process of law, anchored to the saying no one shall be deprived of life, property, and liberty without the due process of law. So with this, we can presume that tax laws shall not be harsh nor oppressive. With this, there are two aspects of due process. Substantive process, which says that there should be a valid law to collect taxes. Yes, the government or the state has the inherent power to tax, but laws must be established to know what to tax and how much to collect. Without the law imposing tax with an object is illegal. The next one is procedural. Procedural due process. It talks about the process of collecting taxes. The government shall not collect taxes without due process of law. Taxpayers are granted with notice and hearings before assessment. So basically, tax cases and tax evasion cases shall go on with due process before the BRR can collect. The third one is uniformity. According to uniformity, taxpayers are grouped and classified into stratas. Some taxpayers are classified like individuals, corporations, like resident citizen, non-resident citizen engaged, and they have income brackets. So taxpayers are grouped, and since we have uniformity, every group has its tax obligation. So it is assigned to them. Yun lang dapat yung kanilang babayaran. So the fourth one is the progressive system of taxation. So, ang ibig sabihin nito, pag progressive yung system, kapag tumaas yung income mo, tataas din yung tax rate mo. Basta yung income, yung tax base mo ay nag-increase, tataas din yung rate ng tax na i-impose sa'yo. Itong progressive system of taxation, ito talaga yung sinasuggest ng Constitution. Kasi consistent siya with ability to pay theory, wherein kung mas mayaman ka, mas marami kang pambayad ng tax. Dahil yun nga yung pananaw nito, di na-encourage din ito yung wealth distribution na connected sa definition ng taxation na nabanggit natin kanina. Kasi kung mas malaki naman yung binabayad mong tax, di mas mababawasan yung wealth mo, then it will trickle down sa mga lower stratas in the society. Number 5 is non-imprisonment for non-payment of debt or poll tax. So, yun. Hindi ka pwedeng makulong kapag pag hindi ka nakabayad ng debt or ng utang. At saka ng basic poll tax. Kasi may dalawang poll tax. Isang basic at saka yung additional community. Yung pwede mo lang hindi bayaran at hindi ka makukulong is yung basic poll tax. Pero pagka yung additional community tax yung na mismo, pwede ka pa rin ma-imprison. However, magkaiba ang debt at saka taxes. Kaya, kapag hindi ka nakapagbayad ng taxes na maliban sa poll tax, pwede ka pa ring ma-imprison. Sunod is non-impairment of obligation and contract. So, if the government has the obligation or given tax grants to other entities like entities that is yung mga entities na nag-undergo ng oil exploration or para sa coal or dun sa mga electric generating na mga businesses or basta yung mga grants nila na binigay for exports, dapat sundin nila yon. Kung exempted sila sa tax, dapat exempted talaga sila sa tax. Hindi na pwedeng baguhin kasi yun nga yung napagkasunduan nila or yun yung agreement nila na dapat hindi pwedeng baguhin ng government. So, the next one is free worship rule. Sa free worship rule, 'di ba may separation tayo ng state at ng church. So, walang pakialam si state kay church. So, ayun, religious organizations are not taxed, hindi itatax for the collections. However, hindi lahat ng income ni religious organization ay galing lang sa collections. Marami sa mga religious organizations ay merong businesses. Yung mga businesses ni religious organizations like mga investment properties or even yung mga stores within the vicinity na owned ni church, taxable yung income nun kasi business naman yun, hindi siya yung mismong religious organization. Number 8 is exemption of religious or charitable entities, non-profit, cemeteries, churches, and mosques from property taxes. Yung mga property taxes nung mga establishment ng mga religious establishment, cemeteries, churches, and basta yung mga religious establishment, hindi siya taxable ng property tax. Pero kapag yung mga other properties ng religious entities na nagge-generate ng income, taxable pa rin siya. Ang hindi lang taxable dito ay yung building mismo na ginagamit nila for religious practices and other stuff. So, number 9. Number 9, hindi pwedeng makareceive ng fund or property para sa benefit ng church ang kahit anong religion kasi nga may separation ng church at saka ng state. To continue with constitutional limitations, dahil pinapahalagahan ng government ang education, nagbigay sila ng exemption sa income ng non-profit at non-stock educational institutions. However, yung mga private educational institution has still a minimum tax payable of 10% on their income. The next one is the concurrence of the majority of all members of Congress for the passage of a law granting tax exemption. So, the number 11, kapag magpo-propose ng law ang isang congressman para sa tax exemption, kailangan ay majority ng buong Congress ang boboto. So, dapat half ng Congress plus 1 ang kailangang bumoto para maisabatas yung tax exemption. However, kapag ka naman merong bagong tax na ipopropose si Congress, okay lang kahit quorum majority or yung half plus 1 ng committee na magte-take up dun sa tax law. Next one is non-diversification of tax collections. So sabi nga kanina, kapareho ng inherent limitations, ang taxes ay for public purpose lang. The next one is the non-delegation of the taxation power. Hindi na pwedeng i-delegate ang taxation power ng Congress sa iba. Pero 'di ba may BIR? Hindi naman dinelegate ng Congress ang powers sa BIR kasi Congress pa din ang nagde-decide kung alin ang dapat i-tax. Ang BIR ay parang collection agency lang kasi hindi naman pwedeng Congress na lang lahat kasi marami din naman silang trabaho. So si BIR hindi siya na-delegate ng taxing power. Siya lang ay isang agency na establish para mag-collect ng taxes na ginawa ng Congress. The next one is the non-impairment of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to review tax cases. Kasi meron tayong Court of Tax Appeals for tax cases. Pero kung kung natalo kayo sa tax case niyo sa Court of Tax Appeals, pwede pa rin daw kayong magpunta sa Supreme Court for final judgment kasi Supreme Court talaga yung pinakamataas na sa judiciary. So, pwede pa din niyang ma-reverse yung decision ni CA if makita niyang mali siya. And, syempre, yung mga decisions ng Supreme Court parang nagiging somehow law na siya kasi nagiging jurisprudence siya. So, ayun. Kung tapos na sa CA, pwede pa rin magpunta sa Supreme Court. Next one is the appropriations, revenues, or tariff bills are originate exclusively in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments. So, ayun, dapat yung mga original bills about taxes, kanina nga sinabi natin na nakadelegate sa legislative, specifically sa Congress or sa House of Representatives lang. Doon magmumula yung law, then pwede naman sumausaw yung Senate, pwedeng nilang i-revise yon or i-amend kapag nasa kanila na. Pero yung mismong idea or yung mismong batas, kailangan magmula muna sa Congress. The last constitutional limitation is the delegation of taxing power to local government units. So, ayun, pwede din, so, ayun, may delegation of taxing power sa LGUs para makapag-generate sila ng sarili nilang income. So, ayun, ang delegation, hindi naman ang galing sa Congress, pero binigyan din ng delegation galing sa Constitution yung LGUs para magkaroon sila ng taxing power. Pero ang taxing power ng LGUs ay dapat galing din sa legislative nila and sa legislative system lang nila. So, stages of taxation. Levy or imposition, levy or imposition or yung pagtatax natin sa isang item. For example, income or like capital gains from the sale of land, transfer tax from stock transfers, and then assessment and collection. Dito na natin malalaman kung magkano yung babayaran natin, then sunod makokollect na or babayaran na natin yung taxes. Yon. Thank you. So that's it for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Don't forget to check the box for description for the practice quiz. That's all. So don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Facebook/JPIA Dalasalipa, Twitter @LeagJPIA, and Instagram @LeagJPIA. Thank you. That's all for today.